Eli, step away from the baggage cart and keep your hands where I can see them.
We're still unloading this flight.
This operation had been in the works for nearly a year. Eli Croven walked right into it. In about 60 seconds, a 5-year career and an 18-month trafficking arrangement both come to an end.
Leave the baggage exactly where it is.
You're stopping airport operations.
That tagged suitcase is staying with us.
I don't decide where bags go.
He would not get to finish his shift. Within 90 minutes of that question, federal agents would search his apartment, his pickup truck, and the gray duffel bag in the trunk. 18 months. More than 200 packages. $1,700,000 in methamphetamine moved through a single airport ramp by a single credentialed worker in a high-visibility vest. And it all came down to 6 minutes of camera footage that did not need to be explained to anyone. Quick question before we go further. Do you know who actually handles your suitcase between the curb and the carousel? Tell me in the comments how many people you think touch your bag on a single connecting flight. Subscribe if you're new here. We cover the cases the mainstream networks scroll right past. Eli Croven was born in Henderson, Nevada in 1991, the second of 3 children in a family that had been working the edges of the airline industry for 2 generations. His father, Doyle Croven, was a refueling truck driver at McCarran for 19 years before a back injury moved him to a desk inside the fueling office. His mother, Renata, worked the gateside coffee kiosk in the C concourse 5 mornings a week. The Crovens rented a single-story house on Major Avenue, 2 miles from the perimeter fence, where the sound of jet engines on approach to runway 25L was loud enough at certain hours to pause a television conversation. This was the household Eli grew up in. Airplanes were not glamorous. Airplanes were rent money. Airplanes were the reason his father came home in a Navy coverall with the smell of Jet A on his sleeves, and the reason his mother set an alarm for 4:15 in the morning. From the time he could read, Eli knew the difference between a 737 and an MD-80 by the angle of the engines. He was an average student at basic high school. His report cards used phrases like, works well with his hands, polite and dependable, and shows little academic ambition. None of that was an insult in the Croven household. The world Eli grew up in did not reward academic ambition. It rewarded showing up at 4 in the morning, in the right boots, with the right badge clipped to the right pocket. He took shop class and small engine repair, and a single year of Spanish that he never used. He graduated in 2009 with no plan beyond a vague intention to follow his father onto the ramp. The path was not immediate. His first job was at a regional general aviation field 40 minutes outside town, washing private aircraft for $9 an hour. He learned to handle a chock, to position a tow bar, to walk under a fuselage without standing up. By 19, he had moved to a fixed base operator at the same field, marshaling small turboprops and topping off oil. The hours were brutal. The pay was barely above the wash line, but he was on the ramp, and the ramp was where the Crovens worked. In 2018, at 27, he was hired by Sky Harbor Ground Services. Sky Harbor was a contracted ground handling provider operating at a Nevada international airport, the kind of company most travelers never notice and never name. Sky Harbor was the staffing layer underneath the airline brand on the side of the airplane. Sky Harbor employees loaded the bags, drove the belt loaders, pushed back the aircraft, and unloaded the cargo holds. They wore high-visibility yellow vests with reflective striping and ID badges on retractable lanyards. They were paid $15.75 an hour to start, with a step increase to $16.50 after the first year. The background check was real, but routine. A criminal history query, a drug screen, reference contacts, a review of any prior arrests. Eli had nothing on his record, not a speeding ticket, not a citation, not a school suspension. The credentialing process took 3 weeks. He was issued a SIDA badge, a security identification display area credential, the laminated card that allowed him to access the secure airside ramp at any time of day, on any concourse, with the appropriate escort or assignment. His first year evaluation called him dependable, a quick learner on the equipment, and willing to take shifts no one else will take. Those last shifts mattered. Eli volunteered for the 4 a.m. to noon rotation. He volunteered for the swing shift that started at 6 in the evening and ran until 2:30 in the morning. He worked Christmas Eve. He worked Easter. He worked the night the temperature on the ramp hit 114 degrees and 3 of his co-workers went home with heat exhaustion. Within 18 months of starting, he was being rotated through every position on the ground crew: belt loader, tug driver, cargo bin loader, ramp lead. His supervisor wrote that he shows the right attitude for a long career in the operation. He lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Spring Valley, west of the airport. He drove a 2014 Chevrolet Silverado pickup that his father had co-signed for. He had a girlfriend named Lacey, who worked as a hostess at a chain steakhouse off Tropicana Avenue. They had been together 2 years. They talked about getting a dog. They talked about saving for a down payment on a house in the northwest part of the city, where the new developments were going up. Eli was 28 years old. He had a SIDA badge clipped to his vest. He had a clean record. He had a plan that looked, from the outside, like every other plan held by every other young man who had been raised on a Nevada ramp. None of that would survive 2021. To understand what Eli Croven did, you have to understand the architecture of an airport ramp. A modern commercial airport runs 2 security models in parallel, and most travelers only ever see one. The first is the public-facing checkpoint, the TSA officers in blue uniforms, the X-ray belt, the body scanner, the shoes off, the laptops out, the lines that wind through the terminal. That model is built around per-passenger screening. Every traveler, every carry-on, every personal item, individually examined before being released into the sterile concourse. The second model is the one almost no traveler sees. The airside ramp, the area outside the terminal between the gate and the runway, where the airplanes actually live. The ramp is patrolled by airport police, monitored by perimeter cameras, and fenced off from the public. But the security model inside the ramp is not built around per-package screening. It cannot be. A major hub processes tens of thousands of checked bags every day, and 98% of those bags never need to be opened by a human being. Instead, the ramp security model relies on 3 things: perimeter control, the fence, the gates, the credentialed access readers, personnel vetting, the background check, the SIDA badge, the random employee screenings, and the operational assumption that bags moving through the ramp have already been screened upstream by TSA at their origin airport. That last assumption is the one that mattered for Eli Croven. TSA screens checked baggage for explosives. It does not, as a general matter, screen checked baggage for narcotics. The agency's mission, statutorily, is aviation security. Drug interdiction is the DEA's job. And the DEA, while present at major airports through task forces and informants, does not run a per-bag screen on domestic checked luggage. A bag containing a kilogram of methamphetamine, packaged carefully, does not look any different to a TSA explosives detector than a bag containing a kilogram of vitamins. It passes through the screening matrix and is loaded onto the airplane. The bag flies. The airplane lands at the Nevada hub. The bag is unloaded onto a belt loader and transferred either to a destination carousel for passengers landing in Nevada or to a transfer belt for passengers continuing to a third city. That ramp transfer window, the 8 or 9 minutes during which a bag is physically off the aircraft, in the hands of ramp workers, before it enters either the carousel system or the next aircraft, is the operational seam. Within that seam, a credentialed ramp worker can do almost anything to a bag that is not visible to a perimeter camera. They can pick it up, they can carry it across the ramp, they can place it in a tug cart, they can move it to a different aircraft, they can move it to an exterior collection point near the perimeter fence. The only things stopping them are the cameras overhead, the gaze of their co-workers, and their own internal honesty. Cameras have blind spots. Co-workers look away. And honesty is a variable. The people who organize the trafficking of narcotics through commercial airports understand this seam better than the traveling public ever will. They know that the bottleneck of airport drug interdiction is not the X-ray machine. It is the human being in the yellow vest on the ramp. They know that recruiting one such human being is more valuable than recruiting 10 couriers, because the human being in the yellow vest is already inside the perimeter, already credentialed, already invisible to the public-facing security apparatus. They know that the going rate for that human being's cooperation is measured in thousands of dollars per package, and that for many ramp workers earning $16.50 an hour, the math is not difficult. This is the system Eli Croven walked into in 2018 with a clean record and a quick smile. This is the system that, 3 years later, would walk up to him with an offer. The approach came in the spring of 2021. According to the affidavit later filed in federal court, the recruitment was made by an associate of the trafficking organization who worked in the groundside cargo logistics business and had legitimate professional contact with Sky Harbor personnel. The recruiter, identified in court documents only as co-conspirator 1, had been operating the recruitment arm of the organization for at least 4 years and had previously placed inside contacts at 2 other regional airports. The first conversation, investigators believe, was casual. A drink at a bar in Henderson. A discussion of how much money was actually being made by the people who organize contraband movement through commercial aviation. A reference to a friend of a friend who had purchased a house outright from 18 months of cooperation. No specific offer was made. No specific bag was discussed. The conversation closed without commitment. The second conversation happened a month later. By then, Eli had thought about it. According to a text message later recovered from his phone, sent to a contact saved as D on the morning of June 4th, 2021, he wrote, "If I did the thing we talked about, how would that even work logistically? Asking hypothetical." The reply came 2 hours later. It was a phone number to call from a payphone, not from his cell. That phone call, never recovered, is when Eli Croven stopped being a ramp handler and started being an asset. The operational mechanics, as later reconstructed by DEA, were straightforward in a way that almost embarrassed investigators when they finally laid it out for a grand jury. At an origin airport, typically Los Angeles, Phoenix, or San Diego, a confederate of the trafficking organization would check a piece of luggage onto a domestic flight inbound to the Nevada hub. The luggage was an ordinary suitcase, a black roller bag, a dark blue duffel, something forgettable. The luggage was checked under the name of a real ticketed passenger who was either a knowing participant or, in some cases, an unwitting one who had been paid a small sum to add an extra bag. The luggage tag, generated automatically by the airline's baggage system, carried a unique baggage identifier and a routing code. The routing code is where the organization built its signal. A specific 3-letter sequence appended to the destination tag, combined with a specific time of arrival window, told Eli that this particular bag was the one to intervene on. The codes were rotated. Eli received the day's code by encrypted message from a contact saved on a secondary cell phone he kept zipped inside the lining of his work jacket. When the inbound flight landed at the Nevada hub, Eli was either assigned to unload the cargo bin directly or, more commonly, positioned within the ramp area to intercept the bag during the brief window between unload and transfer. He would identify the coded tag, separate the bag from the transfer belt, and place it in a specific tug cart that he then drove, alone or under a plausible work pretext, toward the airside perimeter on the cargo side of the airport. At a pre-designated point near the perimeter fence, during a window timed to shift transitions when ramp traffic was at its lowest, an exterior collection contact would approach the cargo side and the bag would be handed off. The exterior contact was rotated, sometimes a uniformed delivery driver, sometimes a member of an airport services subcontractor, always someone whose presence near the perimeter was already explainable. The entire intervention, from the moment Eli identified the bag to the moment of handoff, took between 11 and 17 minutes. He repeated it, according to the indictment, an estimated 210 times over the 18-month period. The payments came in cash. couriered to him in white envelopes left inside a locker at a Spring Valley gym he had joined in the summer of 2021, specifically for that purpose. $2,500 for a small package, $8,000 for the larger ones. By the spring of 2022, Eli was depositing nothing into his bank account that did not look like ramp handler wages, but he had accumulated in a fireproof safe behind a panel in his bedroom closet slightly more than $400,000 in folded U.S. currency. He bought himself a few visible things: a second motorcycle, a trip to Cabo with Lacey, all-inclusive resort for 5 days, a new leather couch, a custom kitchen knife set, nothing extravagant, nothing that screamed money. He had been warned explicitly that the moment his life started to look richer than his pay stub, the operation was over. The operation worked. Month after month, it worked. The signs that should have caught it did not catch it. No coworker reported him. No supervisor noticed the same handler appearing again and again on the manifest of the cargo side perimeter route. No camera review flagged the recurring tug movement at shift transition. The system that had been built around the assumption that ramp workers were honest performed exactly as designed when one of them was not. No one noticed. No one checked. Until, 12 months in, someone 2,000 miles away mentioned his name to a federal agent. The DEA investigation that ended Eli Croven's career did not start with Eli Croven. It did not start with the Nevada hub. It did not start with any specific airport. It started 8 months before Eli's arrest, with a confidential informant inside the regional trafficking organization in Southern California who agreed to cooperate in exchange for a downward departure on a separate federal sentencing exposure. The informant, identified in court only as CI1, had worked in the organization's logistics arm for 3 years. He knew the names of the recruiters. He knew the airports where ramp contacts had been placed. He knew the rotation of routing codes. He did not know every inside contact by face, but he knew enough of them by name and operational role that DEA could begin to triangulate. The Nevada hub came up in his second debrief. The name Eli Croven came up in his fourth. From that point forward, the investigation moved with the slow patience characteristic of federal narcotics work. Surveillance was established on the ramp. Pen registers were placed on phones associated with co-conspirator 1. Camera footage from the cargo side perimeter was pulled and reviewed for the previous 6 months. Patterns began to emerge. The same handler, the same tug, the same window of time, the same approximate location. DEA did not act on what they had. Not yet. The agency wanted what every federal prosecutor wants in this kind of case: a single prosecutorial-grade event captured on video in which the defendant performs the complete operational sequence in a way that no defense attorney can argue around. They did not want 18 months of circumstantial pattern. They wanted 6 minutes of certainty. They constructed it. In coordination with TSA, airport law enforcement, and a Los Angeles side counterpart team, DEA established what is sometimes called a controlled scenario. A monitored package was prepared. The package contained simulated contraband, a substance that visually and weight-wise approximated methamphetamine, but was, in fact, inert. The package was sealed inside a black roller bag identical to those previously documented in the operation. The bag was checked on an actual ticketed reservation at a Los Angeles airport during a window that matched Eli's known shift assignments at the Nevada hub. The routing code on the tag, the 3-letter sequence followed by the specific time of arrival window, was the exact code DEA believed Eli was alerted on for that day. They believed it because they had recovered, 2 days prior, through a cooperator on the recruitment side, the code that had been transmitted to him. The bag flew. The flight landed. Eli was on the ramp. What happened next was captured on multiple coordinated camera angles, including a previously unmounted high-definition camera positioned that morning by airport law enforcement at the cargo side perimeter, with a sightline to the precise location DEA's prior surveillance had identified as the handoff point. The footage runs roughly 6 minutes from end to end. It shows the airplane arriving at the gate. It shows the cargo door opening. It shows Eli, in his yellow vest, climbing into the bin to unload. It shows him hand each piece of luggage onto the belt loader without hesitation, in the practiced rhythm of a worker who had done this thousands of times. It shows him, halfway through the unload, pause for half a second on a black roller bag. It shows him glance at the tag. It shows him set the bag aside from the transfer belt onto a separate tug cart that was, by coincidence or by design, already positioned to his right. It shows him finish the unload. It shows him drive the tug away from the aircraft, alone, in a direction that, according to the ramp manifest for that morning, he had no operational reason to drive in. It shows him stop at the cargo side perimeter. It shows him remove the black roller bag from the tug. It shows him carry it to a service gate. It shows another person, in the uniform of an airport catering subcontractor, approach from the exterior side. It shows the handoff. It does not require interpretation. The collection contact was apprehended at the perimeter immediately following the handoff. He was placed in custody without incident. The bag was secured by federal agents, and a perimeter team began surveilling Eli through the remainder of his shift. Eli, on the ramp, knew none of this yet. He completed his shift, returned the tug to the staging area, signed out his equipment, walked through the Sky Harbor crew building, and clocked out at 12:14 p.m. He drove his pickup truck out of the employee parking lot and onto the airport access road, intending, according to a recovered text message to Lacey, to grab lunch and stop at the gym. He did not make it to either. While he drove, federal agents executed a search warrant on his apartment. A second warrant team approached the perimeter pickup location and recovered, in a secondary stash spot DEA had been monitoring, 2 additional packages that had been moved through prior shifts. A third team obtained a state court warrant for the Spring Valley gym locker. The apartment search produced, behind a removable panel in the bedroom closet, a fireproof safe. Inside the safe, agents recovered $412,000 in U.S. currency, bound in rubber-banded stacks. They recovered a second cell phone, a prepaid model, with an encrypted messaging application containing 18 months of conversation, with contacts identified only by single letters. They recovered a small spiral notebook containing what appeared to be a log of dates, 3-letter codes, and dollar amounts. They recovered the gym locker key. They recovered a passport in Eli's name with no recent international stamps. The gym locker, when opened, contained an envelope. Inside the envelope was $6,500 in cash and a handwritten note with a date 3 days in the future and a routing code. The encrypted messages on the second phone produced the operational architecture of the entire 18-month arrangement. Identified by letter only, the contacts traced through metadata and call records to known members of the Southern California Trafficking Organization that DEA had been building a case on for almost 2 years. Several of the exchanges, recovered intact, were almost banal in their familiarity. The kind of casual confirmation you might expect between any 2 people coordinating a routine workplace transaction. D. March 14th, 2023. Tomorrow, 0930, inbound LAS, lacks origin. Tag 3. Letter is BVT confirm. Copy BVT tomorrow, 0930. D. March 14th, 2023. Standard handoff. Envelope Friday. Copy. D. April 6th, 2023. 2 package tomorrow, same protocol, same code, XJN. 2 is risky. 1 is fine. 2 is risky. D. April 6th, 2023. It's been fine for a year. Just do it. Copy. The notebook, in Eli's handwriting, was the closest thing to a confession that any federal prosecutor will ever recover before an indictment is unsealed. It listed every package by date, code, and payment amount. It totaled, across 18 months, more than 200 entries and a cash sum that aligned within 5% of the cash recovered from the safe. His fingerprints were on every page. The traffic stop happened at 1:07 p.m. on the Nevada State route running east of the airport, at a point investigators had selected for its lack of bystanders and proximity to a Nevada Highway Patrol substation. 2 unmarked DEA vehicles initiated. Eli pulled over without resistance. When the lead agent approached the driver's side window, Eli had both hands on the steering wheel. His SIDA badge was still clipped to his vest. He had not removed his sunglasses. We're about to get to the part where Eli sits down in a federal interview room, and his life as a free man ends. Before we do, if you've made it this far, you already know this channel covers cases that most networks won't touch. Subscribe and hit the bell. We do this every single week, and these stories deserve more eyes. The lead agent identified himself by name and credential. The conversation that followed was captured on the agent's body-worn camera. Mr. Croven, I'm Special Agent Rewell Tasker with the Drug Enforcement Administration. I need you to step out of the vehicle, please. What's this about? It's about the bag you offloaded this morning, the black Samsonite, the one you carried to the cargo side service gate at 11:06. Step out of the vehicle, please. There was a pause of approximately 3 seconds, recorded on the body camera, during which Eli did not move and did not speak. The agent later wrote in his report that Eli's grip on the steering wheel tightened visibly. His shoulders dropped half an inch. His face did not move. I want to talk to a lawyer. That's your right. Step out of the vehicle, please. Slowly. Hands where I can see them. Am I under arrest? Yes, sir, you are. There was no resistance, no flight, no statement beyond the request for counsel. Eli stepped out of the truck, placed his hands behind his back without being asked, and was handcuffed beside the front quarter panel of the Silverado. He was searched on scene, walked to the back of one of the DEA vehicles, and transported to the federal building downtown. The interview, when it began at 3:22 p.m. with his court-appointed counsel present, lasted 19 minutes. Eli answered no substantive questions. He confirmed his name. He confirmed his date of birth. He confirmed his address. He acknowledged, when shown still images from the morning's ramp footage, that he was the individual depicted. He acknowledged, when shown the contents of the recovered safe, that the cash had been in his bedroom closet. He declined to identify any of the contacts in the encrypted messaging application. At 3:41 p.m., his attorney terminated the interview. Eli was processed, booked into federal custody, and held without bail pending a detention hearing. His attorney filed for release on conditions. The government opposed. The magistrate, citing the volume of cash recovered, the existence of a valid passport, and the nature of the charges, denied release. Eli Croven would not sleep in his own apartment again. The indictment was returned by a federal grand jury in the District of Nevada 11 days after his arrest. It contained 4 counts: distribution of methamphetamine in violation of 21 U.S.C. Paragraph 841, conspiracy to distribute in violation of 21 U.S.C. Paragraph 846, aiding and abetting trafficking in violation of 18 U.S.C. Paragraph 2, and a sentencing enhancement for using the cover of employment in a sensitive area to facilitate drug trafficking. The estimated combined retail value methamphetamine volume moved through Eli's intervention over the 18-month period was placed in the indictment at approximately $1,700,000. The government noted in its detention memorandum that this figure was almost certainly conservative, reflecting only those packages investigators could specifically corroborate, and that the actual figure was likely higher. As of the date of this case brief, Eli Croven's case remains pending. He has not entered a plea on the substantive counts. His attorney has filed pretrial motions challenging certain aspects of the surveillance and the controlled scenario. The government has filed responsive briefing. A trial date has been set and reset twice. The most recent docket entry projects a trial in the following calendar year. He remains in federal pretrial detention at a facility in southern Nevada. Lacey, who had been his girlfriend for 4 years and had been planning to look at houses with him the weekend after his arrest, was interviewed by DEA in the days following. She cooperated. She was not charged. She told investigators that she had noticed, in the prior 12 months, that Eli was sometimes carrying more cash than seemed reasonable for a ramp handler. She had asked him about it once. He had told her he had been winning at the casino. She had wanted to believe him. She moved out of the Spring Valley apartment 2 weeks after his arrest and returned, with most of her belongings, to her mother's house in Henderson. Doyle Croven, Eli's father, gave a single brief statement to a local reporter outside the federal courthouse on the morning of the detention hearing. He said, "I raised him to work hard and to keep his head down. I don't know what happened to that boy. I don't know what to say to anybody." He has declined further interviews. Sky Harbor Ground Services terminated Eli's employment 2 days after his arrest. The company issued a brief statement reaffirming its commitment to background screening and credentialed access integrity. The Nevada International Airport's police department conducted an internal review of perimeter camera coverage at the cargo side service gate and announced a planned upgrade to the camera array, expected to be completed within the following operational quarter. The TSA, in coordination with DEA, has reportedly expanded its random ramp employee screening program at several large hubs in the aftermath of the case, though specific operational details have not been made public. The 6 minutes of ramp surveillance footage that DEA captured on the morning of the controlled scenario remain, according to the government's filings, the centerpiece of the case in chief. The footage has not been released publicly. It will be played to a jury, if the case goes to trial, in a federal courtroom in Las Vegas, where 12 jurors who have spent their lives passing through airport terminals will see, in a way that nothing else could quite communicate, what was happening on the other side of the security door. They will see a man in a yellow vest. They will see him pause on a black roller bag. They will see him separate it from the transfer flow. They will see him drive it to the perimeter. They will see him hand it off through a service gate. They will not need to be told what it means. They will already know. Because everyone who has ever checked a bag at a domestic airport has trusted, in a way they probably never thought through consciously, that the person in the yellow vest on the other side of the door was honest. That the bag they handed over at the counter would be put on the plane and not into a tug cart and a parallel pickup channel. That the security model that had been so visible at the checkpoint extended, somehow, into the parts of the airport they could not see. For 18 months, in one narrow operational seam at one Nevada hub, that trust was misplaced. The footage exists. The notebook exists. The cache exists. The encrypted messages exist. Whatever Eli Croven's defense team builds in the months ahead, the 6 minutes